Gun modifications offer a range of benefits and bonuses which can be added to your guns in Cyberpunk 2077. From plain and simple damage bonuses to a quicker attack speed, reload, and rate of fire, this video is going to be exploring some of the best places to find these potentially elusive mods, weighing up their pros and cons before deciding once and for all which are best. As usual, I'll be running with the classic ranking order format based on my personal preferences, though bear in mind that in this instance, different mods have different utilities, and their overall usefulness to you will depend on your build. This is as much an explanation guide video as it is a ranking. If you've been enjoying the series thus far, then don't forget to sub to the channel for more content like this. Thank you. Now let's get to it. Down at the bottom, we have the gun mod Weaken. This one will, upon hitting an enemy, decrease that enemy's accuracy by 10% for 10 seconds. Now, this is certainly a bit more creative than simple damage boosts, and when using this thing, it is indeed a potentially noticeable effect. Going right back to early game on very hard mode and using it against some goons, I found it was indeed reducing the number of bullets that hit me. My problem with this mod is that being hit 10% less, though, doesn't actually do that much in the grand scheme of things. Enemy groups are still a serious threat if they were before, though we can afford to be slightly less careful. Otherwise, enemies won't be a serious threat anyway, and we're wasting our mod slots on something which is therefore irrelevant. Don't get me wrong, this mod does have use cases, particularly in early game, and getting off some burst fire onto all enemies in a group at the start of a fight will land you a small advantage. Of course, these mods can be scaled up to a full 40% with 4 mods on legendary guns, but like I say, by the time you've reached those higher levels, going with this mod is a waste. I'd recommend maybe buying up some from Robert Wilson at the Second Amendment store in early game, and attaching them to guns you don't intend to use later. Mods can't be removed once they're placed, and the only way to recover them is to disassemble the gun, having unlocked the Waste Not Want Not crafting perk. This one also can't be crafted, so you'll have to scavenge or buy new ones whenever you need them. Next up, we have Neon Arrow, a weapon mod which increases reload time by 5%, and by stacking 4, we can reduce it to a full 20%. Therein lies the main issue with this mod, however, as well as the reason it's sitting so low down on the list. Neon Arrow cannot be crafted, nor seemingly bought. My online research led me to believe that there were only 3 available in the game, yet upon doing my own searching, I literally only found 1. This was up at the Northside docks at the appropriately named Needle in a Haystack scanner hustle. Allegedly, there's another near Victor's Clinic and a third during the Monster Hunt gig. I searched high and low and couldn't find either. It's exceptionally annoying that only one is available, in fact, because were it craftable, buyable, or even just had a few more unique drops, it would easily be one of the best on this list. I decided to command a few more in just to see their full potential, with the small hope that others have found more than one and can do this legitimately. I found it worked best with the Sovereign Shotgun and Comrade's Hammer Revolver. Both single shot guns, and when combined with the Sandevistan, can technically shoot as fast as they can reload, as opposed to regular guns which don't speed up with us in sandy time. Comrade's Hammer was certainly a nice improvement, and Sovereign actually felt faster than a pump action. My advice to you would be to save this very precious mod/mods for a one-shotting gun you're going to use a lot. Since extra damage is pointless at that point, the speed at which you can fire becomes the only viable way to improve your DPS, and a faster reload will definitely help with that. Comment below if you found a Neon Arrow anywhere else but here, and we'll try our best to establish other drops for them. Suffering the same issue as Neon Arrow, Vendetta is another highly rare gun mod which increases headshot damage by 10%. I found this one particularly useful when added to pistols like Death and Taxes, for Hitman-style based takedowns. Equally, if you're a crack shot with a sniper or use the smart gun headshotting method, then this could make it quite a bit more lucrative for you. That is, of course, if you can find any. They're most common around the Hayward area and can allegedly be looted from Valentino's. The only one I could actually find as a definitive spawn, though, was this suspected crime activity right here, near the Glen apartment. Again, with not even enough mods to stack onto one legendary gun, this does throw a pretty big dampener onto the mod overall. Not to mention the fact that headshots are already pretty powerful, and slapping an extra 10 or at most 40% onto a gun, which already has 100% headshot damage bonus, doesn't increase overall damage by quite as impressive a ratio. What's more, the Crunch mod can improve overall damage by 7%. That's not too far off from 10 and applies the damage to the whole body. Overall though, Vendetta would certainly have earned a higher place on the list if only just for providing a greater reward with getting headshots, but its rarity, unfortunately, is just something which prevents it from being a viable part of most builds. A decent mod for early game, or just players with a more spray and pray attitude, Pulverise increases damage to limbs by 5% and can be stacked for a maximum of 20% limb damage. Acquiring this one is pretty easy. Just refresh the Second Amendment store in V's apartment building until it shows up in Robert Wilson's inventory. This is, by the way, one of the better stores to do this, I've found, since it's one of the only stores where you don't have to leave when wanting to skip time. Most things are also available here, and it's just that little bit more efficient. As a cheap mod, which costs €375 and doesn't go past uncommon, it's mostly a good early game mod to slap onto disposable guns for that extra bit of damage. From what I can tell, it also ups the limb dismemberment event and does indeed live up to the name Pulverize. My favourite way to use this one was to stack them onto an LMG like the Defender, for more of that unstoppable Terminator feel. Since you probably won't bother aiming for the head with an LMG, and there's 4 times as many limbs as heads on a person, this is a cheap and notable upgrade. Do bear in mind though that once you have the legendary crunch mod, that's going to give you 7% overall damage and be better in every way statistically than this. So if you have an LMG or heavy duty weapon you plan on using late game, you might want to hold off on modding it with these. Another mod with fairly limited use cases, Pax increases weapon damage by an extra 3% and makes the modded gun non-lethal. This of course is great for pacifist players, though for those who don't want to kill, the easier alternative for this is to simply install the target analysis mod on your Kuroshi optics to make everything non-lethal across the board. That one can also be equipped and unequipped at your leisure, unlike Pax. At the same time, if you had, say, a particular gun to use against cyber psychos, then slapping a Pax mod on it would permanently make sure you don't accidentally kill any of them. But the biggest and possibly most important use case for this mod, in my opinion, is for those who want to use Skippy in Stone Cold Killer mode from the get-go, and don't want for him to later switch to puppy-loving kneecap-aiming pacifist. By slapping a Pax mod on him immediately, Skippy will still aim for the head, but won't kill anyone either, thus not racking up the 50 kills, thus not switching modes. This one again can't be crafted, but can be bought very cheaply from Robert Wilson at the Second Amendment store. Now we get on to the first melee weapon mod on this list. There are 4 melee weapon mods in total, and most have pretty basic stat boosts. The one, White-Knuckled, offers a 2.5% extra crit chance, and can be bought from all melee weapon vendors for a mere 180 eddies. That's the same price for all the melee mods, so no competition there. Fully stacking this into a legendary weapon with 3 slots will of course give us a 7.5% extra crit chance. A welcome boost, but not amazing at the price of all our melee slots. That is of course unless you're using a weapon with insane crit damage like the Satori Katana, as we want to be getting that 500% crit damage as often as we can. Overall though, I rank this one lowest for melee weapons simply because I don't find it as much of a boost as the others, with perks and such offering higher crit chances than this. It's also possible with some weapons to scale your crit chance to 100% without needing this extra 7.5. It's the only metric with a limit here out of the 4, and thus does not offer as much overall benefit as the others. Slightly better for melee weapons is the Cold Shoulder damage mod, offering a 5% bonus overall damage which can stack to 15%. There's also an epic variant available, very rarely, which cranks this up to 6%. I found one at this assault in progress in the Night City Lower Gardens. Sure, 1% is barely anything, but worth having as opposed to not. Now, Cold Shoulder is the most basic mod when it comes to melee weapons, and I'd recommend using it on items which already have excellent base stats, simply because you might as well cheaply scale them up for that extra damage. Fast swinging clubs like Cottonmouth and Sir John Fallerstiff are already top tier weapons in their category. They don't really need to swing faster or get more crits necessarily, so you might as well save your stamina and just deal more damage per hit. In fact, since these weapon mods are so cheap, I'd recommend slapping them onto the random household items which count as weapons earlier in the game if you plan on using any of them. It'll make those early levels slightly easier, and the small investment will no doubt pay off in the long run. Again, head to any melee vendor and they should be selling the weapon mods. Next we have yet another weapon mod which definitely suffers from a scarcity issue. Whilst I've definitely found more Phantoms than I have Neon Arrows or Vendettas, this weapon mod is probably best reserved for one gun that you like. Phantom is able to increase our rate of fire by 5%, which scales up to 20% when stacked. They can only be found in Rocky Ridge, annoyingly, but at least we can acquire them early-ish on in the game when heading up here with Pan Am. Scattered around the saloon are several crates housing both Scourge melee mods and Phantoms. Unfortunately, the ratios are interchangeable, and you could end end up with a minimum of 2 or at most 6 phantoms probably. This is the only place to acquire them as well. Now I can tell you I knew exactly what gun I was going to use with these from the get-go. Problem Solver is already the fastest firing weapon in the game, nearing 1000 rounds per minute. Let's take it over that, shall we? By slapping on 4 phantom mods, we take bullets fired per second from 17 up to 22, and it gets better. You see, Problem Solver has a 6% crit chance. Pretty low, but with 22 bullets per second, that's still 1.3 crits every single second. So by equipping a cyber deck with legendary short circuit, we can be inflicting constant electrical damage on top of physical damage. Though bear in mind, that's just one build, and Phantom can be used in a variety of lucrative ways, particularly with automatic guns. Want more EMP explosions with the Yinglong? Well then just fire more bullets per second. This is certainly one of the more fun weapon mods we can mess around with in this game, and I'd love to rank it higher, but the fact that we might not even be able to source the 4 we'd need to max out one gun does put a bit of a dampener on the whole thing, limiting the possibilities for some players and not others, which really isn't fair. As I was just saying, the second of those 2 mods found up at Rocky Ridge is Scourge. Thing is, Scourge can also be acquired, just like all melee mods, from weapon vendors too, so don't worry about having to hunt around for these. This one provides a 10% boost to crit damage, and in my opinion is simply more useful for more of the game's weapons than White-Knuckled. The Jinshu Maru sword, for example, has a 100% crit chance when under the Korenzakov effect, so this is literally free extra damage at that point. Similarly, Scalpel boosts crit chance by 50% under a Sandevistan, so this is fully worth doing for that. Basically, what I'm saying is that weapons with high crit chance benefit well from boosted crit damage, whereas weapons with high crit damage, vice versa, benefit from higher crit chance. Since there's more melee weapons with higher crit chance in the game, I think this is more of a worthwhile mod on the whole than White-Knuckled. On that same note, Penetrator serves as the crit chance booster mod for guns, and usefully, we can get a crafting spec for this one. Most likely, you'll find it exploring the world's random crates of loot, but if you're desperate, then restocking the inventory of the Japantown weapon vendor might yield you some luck. With common giving a 1% boost and legendary 3%, you'll want to wait until you have the best variant before adding it to those high-powered legendary guns. Now, a good use case I can think for this, once again, runs with the legendary short circuit damage boost. By stacking 4 of these, we can boost our crit chance by 12%, and thus give ourselves a fair amount more crit hitting chance for that extra electrical damage. Equally, if you have a gun with an already reasonably high crit damage, like for example Guts or Sovereign, we can bring that crit chance up to maximize the number of times we get that extra damage. Now, there's going to be a mathematical formula when it comes to each of these as to which mod will most efficiently increase damage output. Which is best out of base damage, crit damage, or crit chance is gonna vary according to the weapon in question and its pre-existing percentages. Our final mod for melee weapons, Kunai, does something a little more interesting in my eyes, especially for slower swinging two-handed tools. With each mod applied increasing attacks per second by 0.3, this mod operates off of a fixed integer rather than percentages, and makes it a lot more worthwhile for things which were slow to begin with. A katana, for example, outputting 4 swings per second, will see far less improvement going to 5, though the Caretaker's Spade, which can now swing at almost double its original speed, is going to get a much bigger improvement on the overall base damage output of the weapon. Seriously, with melee weapons like this especially, I don't see why you'd use anything else. And this has actually solved one of my biggest criticisms when it comes to this awesome other dimensional piece of kit. The same goes for the hammer. Equally, you could still add it to katanas if fastest swinging most insane ninja is what you're going for over fixed statistical numbers. I get it, you want a visual tangible improvement over simply increased damage, and that's okay, I want that too. That's why it's my favorite melee weapon mod. At number 4, we have one of the most basic but undoubtedly effective mods in the game. Crunch, as I've mentioned already, offers between 3 to 7% extra base damage at different tiers, rising all the way up to a maximum of 28% when stacked into a legendary gun. More than a quarter extra damage is not something to scoff at, and even something lower than that in early game can sometimes mean the difference between winning a fight and not. Of course, being me, the first thing I thought to do with this was to attach it onto the Comrade's hammer, a totally unnecessary but fun endeavor nonetheless. yes. And yeah, it works well. The enemies still go down in one shot, obviously, but the number is bigger. This make my eyes happy, and it good forget big number with Comrade Hammer. In all seriousness, this is probably best used mid-game to bring one-shot weapons like Death and Taxes or Dying Knight into the realm of one-shot kill slightly earlier than they otherwise would be, and allowing immediately for those Hitman-style stealth takedowns. This one can indeed be crafted, but annoyingly the crafting spec seems random. Though since you probably won't have high enough crafting in earlier game anyway, I'd recommend exploring rooftops and loot boxes to hopefully acquire the spec for free that way. Now, Pacifier does exactly what Crunch does, but instead applies to crit damage rather than base damage. Honestly, I could just as easily switch these two around on the rankings, but I just find getting the red crit numbers to be a bit more interesting and rewarding than the white ones, and any way to get that number up is a bonus in my book. Again, the crafting spec is random, but the weapon vendor in downtown I've heard should definitely have it in their cycle somewhere. Personally, I enjoyed again adding this to Death and Taxes for a stealth takedown at the Wraith Camp. The crit effect wasn't nearly as numerous as some guns, but when it applied, it was a great bit of helpful extra damage. Equally, you could take a more heads-on approach with an assault rifle, for example, and it could there too be a helpful, if slightly rarer, damage boost. Again, the higher the base crit chance of a gun though, the more you'll reap the benefits of this extra damage. So have a scroll through your stash and see what's offering the best rates. Now here's a very interesting one. Countermass is the only weapon mod to come at a base tier of Epic, and offers a very useful and welcome benefit of eliminating horizontal recoil. Now for many guns, this ability is absolutely essential. Take for example the Problem Solver, with its insane recoil and bullet spray. Beforehand it looked like this, yet now it fires up in a straight line. Since the best way to use this gun anyway is by firing at the ground and utilizing ricochet, this mod improves our accuracy in doing that by a lot. The best thing about this is you only need one to utilize the effect to its fullest, meaning on a legendary gun you'd still have 3 slots left for other things. Annoyingly though, these can't be crafted and come slightly more expensive than other weapon mods, at a price of 1,238. Fortunately though, they're fairly common, and I had a lot of luck cycling through vendors in Haywood to find them. So what are you waiting for? Go grab one of these and say goodbye to 2-dimensional recoil patterns. This is of course if you use an automatic gun, since the effect isn't so notable nor appreciated on those that fire one shot. Now, Countermass is very good, and unique, come to that, but there's a mod which in certain circumstances can be even more lucrative. So much so, in fact, that some might even class it as broken. The Combat Amplifier will increase our chance to apply damage status effects by 5%. That means whatever elemental damage our weapon inflicts, whether it be Fenrir's fire, divided we stands poison, bleeding or electrical, this mod will boost that effect by 5%. And of course, stacking 4 onto the same weapon leads to a 20% boost. Now, here's the broken part. There are some weapons which don't apply a damage status effect. Johnny's Malorian is a prime example, and Yinglong, despite blasting copious EMPs, actually also sits in this camp. Should we apply 4 combat amplifiers to these guns, we'll get a 20% chance to bleed, poison, shock, and burn, resulting essentially in an 80% chance to apply a lingering damage elemental effect. It is honestly so broken, and without a doubt the best set of mods to apply onto any guns which happen to fit the no pre-standing elemental effects description. They cost a mere 675 eddies, but can also even more usefully be crafted. Again, the spec is pretty RNG, but the internet seems to suggest that the downtown weapon vendor is statistically a good bet. Don't quote me on that though, because I don't have the statistical data to back that up. Overall, I love this one the most. It's totally broken and totally brilliant, though I wouldn't necessarily waste it on guns like Fenrir, since you'll only boost the burn effect, and it'd be a waste. But let me know what you think. What's your favorite weapon mod in Cyberpunk 2077 and why? I hope this video helped in outlining each of the weapon mods, what they do, and some decent use cases for them. Again, don't take the ranking element too seriously. I get that we're wading into pretty subjective, build-dependent territory out here, and this is just my opinion. If you like this video though, then likes are very much appreciated. I plan to get around to the clothes mods as soon as I can, and if you want to know more about any of the guns featured in this video, then I've produced ranking videos for every gun type on this channel, and I'm now working my way through melee weapons. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Bram, and I'll see you soon in another video.